All right, what did I do with your info? I left my glasses at House of Chow.
Oh, and girl, we just had that last night.
Was it good?
Right, girl.
Pull that mic up to you.
That's
Pull it
the
up.
only. That's the only place I eat Chinese food.
Really? We're on.
All right.
You are listening to the show on WNHHLP 103.5 FM, broadcasting live from downtown New Haven. We're streaming live on TuneIn Radio and NewHavenIndependent.org. We're also streaming live video on Facebook Live. Just go to facebook.com, New Haven Independent, or just go to your own Facebook page and look us up. Good evening, all. It's been a tough week. Sending condolences out, of course, to the Gardine and Huckabee families, as well as the Mayo family and my own family. It has been a tough week. We are pulling through, and we will live by our faith. Our faith will get us through this time. In the studio with me, who I've been trying to get in the studio with me, who is squad adjacent, State Representative Robyn Porter. She represents the 94th District in Connecticut and has a D by her name, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. She is the chair of Labor. She sits on the Judiciary and Appropriations Committees. And she does have an opponent who is running against her, who is a freshman at Yale University. And I guess for equal time purposes, at some point, I'm going to have to bring that person in before November 4th. How are you, State Rep Porter?
I'm doing well.
You doing well?
I am. I have no complaints.
Well, you know, I have seen you on Facebook knocking on doors. What is that about? Why are you all out?
Oh, we are out because that is what it's going to take to win this thing and make sure that we maintain the majority in the House and actually get the majority back in the Senate. So grassroots is the way to go. You know, Republicans have money and we have boots on the ground. So I'm out there working to make sure that we maintain the majority and actually expand our bench where we can.
Now, when you say expand your bench, you mean what? You want more strength in the House?
I want more seats in the House and in the Senate. And in the way of seats, yes, more strength, more people that are going to be progressive about the issues that impact my community, other communities, the state of Connecticut at large, people that are going to do the things that are necessary for us to have sustainable revenue streams in this state so that we can get out of the red, we can get this budget balanced and not balanced on the back of working class and middle class people, but balanced in a way that is equitable across the board.
Now, when you say budget balanced, exactly where are we in Connecticut and how much are we in the red?
Well, you know, that seems to change day in and day out. Exactly where we are at this point, I don't know. We're probably hundreds, if not headed toward a billion, and we're probably
$1 billion.
Yeah, we're hundreds of millions. So we're in trouble.
Oof.
And when I say red, I mean deep red.
Deep
right?
red.
And it's because we've been doing this thing where we are cutting, right, and shrinking government, as Republicans like to coin it. And we haven't really done much in the way of bringing revenues into the state. And it's just like with your checkbook at home. You don't get to write checks, right? You don't get to make credits, debits, unless you have credits.
Right.
And we need to work on bringing some credit to the state.
Now, what are we prepared to take in as far as business? I mean, what is our infrastructure like as a state? What do we offer?
Well, I mean, if you look at what happened when GE exited the state, a lot of the reasoning behind that was the fact that we didn't have the infrastructure. We didn't have the transportation up to par.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have the workforce that they were looking for, and the digital infrastructure that they were
Yeah.
looking for. We were not competitive in those ways, which made Boston much more appeasing to them, right? The appearance of Boston outweighed us by a long shot.
Yeah.
They had what they needed in their city, in their the city,
urban area,
right, to offer them what they were looking for to expand their business in a way that we just couldn't compete with. And it wasn't because they were being taxed out of the state, because the taxes are actually higher.
Yeah.
In Massachusetts, they didn't leave to go to Florida. They went right next door.
Next door, over the line.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So that makes a difference as well.
Mm-hmm.
So in knocking on doors, what is the feedback that you're getting from citizens around the state? What is their take on what's going on in Hartford?
It's varied. I think you have people that are upset at what's going on. They're upset at, Democrats and Republicans not being able to get along, and, the rhetoric that's being spewed. They want us to get along, and they want us to get the job done. And then you have other people that just feel like, and I think of one person today, as I was knocking doors in Stratford, Democrat came to the door and he said, we're going to hell in a handbasket. And he was upset about what was happening nationally and how he felt like we were the laughing stock of the country, and that, we needed to make some change. And his biggest complaint was that Democrats don't have a platform. They don't have an agenda. I don't know what it is they're doing. I'm a Democrat. I always vote straight Democrat because I believe in democratic values, but I don't exactly know what that means when it comes to the party, because I'm not getting a uniform message from the party.
Yeah.
So that's some of the feedback that we're getting. And,
and is there a uniform message? Not to put you on the spot, but is there one? I mean, you're out here, boots on the ground, talking to people who are Democrats as well as Republicans and probably independents. And so do they think the Democrats have a message, and are they getting that message?
Obviously, some of them don't think we have a message. They're not getting the message. I believe that we do have a message. I think that we can be stronger about the way we get the narrative out, because that's been the problem.
Tell the story.
Yes. Republicans have controlled the narrative. They have been able to master it by consistency, right? And I don't think that we have been as consistent with our messaging as we need to be. But there are definitely things that are important to Democrats, and they are democratic values that we ran on, this session. And a lot of them had to do with, women's rights and working class, middle class, working families, minimum wage, paid family medical leave, protecting the rights of people, and dealing with, the economic woes of the state. And I think that's like one of the biggest priorities for us, like really getting our budget in order so that we can have a balanced budget and then move forward and have the money to do what we need to do to address all these other issues that are consistently on the chopping block when we're making these cuts.
And what are you seeing in your own district? What's the feedback you're getting in the 94th?
In the 94th, people they're sick and tired. They're scared. They're starting to understand that they need to vote. They need to get to the polls. That, maybe we shouldn't have sat home as much as we did in 2016, because elections do have consequences. And I believe that there is definitely momentum, right? And there's definitely an up movement going on, right? There's this undergirding that's happening, and I'm seeing it not just in my district, but across the state, in all corners of the state, not just the urban areas, but in the suburban areas as well, and the rural areas that I've been to. Like, people are really starting to realize that we can't win this by sitting on the bench. We have to be in the game.
You have to be in the game.
And part of being in the game means being at the polls, not just you, but everybody in your household.
Right.
Your family, your friends, your peers, your coworkers. They're understanding that they need to start having these conversations outside of the inner circle, right? That it needs to be taken to the general population.
Well, as Black women, we know that we get everybody that is of voting age out of the house.
That's right.
And other people don't do that. And I'm always surprised by that, because it always seems as if, and now I see African Americans doing the same thing, taking the right to vote for granted. That people really think in a democracy, which you do, you have the right to exercise your vote the way you choose. But if you see the result of that vote not bringing what you want to fruition, then you have to be active. And it takes more than one election.
Absolutely.
Because I've seen folk, when I was a reporter, especially with Obama, they would get the Obama robocall, and in certain neighborhoods, the line would be wrapped around the school, right? But midterm, local elections, you'd be in and out in 10 minutes. And so I'm not so sure if that's because people don't understand the importance of the vote. I don't know if they don't understand how democracy works. I don't know whether they feel like their vote's ineffective. And so how do you motivate people to say your vote counts? Because we don't have civics classes anymore in school either.
For me personally, especially when I'm on the doors, but even when I'm just out, right, and talking to people, because it's inevitable. Sooner or later, if you're talking to me, we're going to be talking about politics and the state of the state, right?
Yeah.
And for me, I press upon issues that personally impact them when it comes to education, when it comes to seniors and veterans and resources, opportunities, a lot of things that go on in our communities that don't happen in other communities is because we have low voter turnout. And I tell them, I'm quite frank with them. I'm like, you have to vote. Your vote is your power. Your vote is your voice. And if you don't exercise the vote, then you give up your power. Yeah. Nobody's going to worry about doing right by you, fixing your sidewalks, making sure that your schools have resources if you're not voting, because your vote is the power to seat and unseat.
Right.
And if you're not voting and the people that are in office are not doing right by you and represent you on the strength that you need them to, they're not worried about you because you're not exercising the power to unseat them.
Right. And I believe, too, that people don't understand that it's more than a vote, right?
It is.
I don't think they understand that this means how your district,
redistricting.
Yep. Who represents you, what gets done in your neighborhood really depends on how that neighborhood turns out to vote.
Absolutely.
Something as simple as you said, getting your sidewalk fixed. You might be the last neighborhood in the city, right, wrong, or indifferent.
That's
to
right.
get your sidewalk fixed because y'all are slow on the vote.
Low voter turnout would be the reason. And when you think about it, it's not fair. It's not just.
Right.
But it happens.
It happens.
And it's always happened. And when we do go out to vote and we put people in office, because this is what I've been told on the door when I make the argument that my vote doesn't count. Yes, it does. No, it doesn't. When I was voting and people were getting put into office, I wasn't getting the resources I need. I'm still not getting the resources I need. I said, but we have to make sure that the people we're putting in office are not just like-minded, but they're like-valued, right? What matters to you has to matter to me.
Right.
Because if it matters to me and I'm your state rep, then you don't have to worry about what I'm fighting for when I get there.
Right.
Because fighting for you means fighting for me.
Right.
And vice versa. And then that way I'm able to be an authentic voice because I'm listening, I'm connected to community, I'm connected to the issues, I know what the problems are, and I go and I fight based on that and not what I want. It's not about me personally.
Right.
It's not a personal agenda. It's a people agenda. So we have to mind who we appoint to represent us. And we have to actively seek these people out.
Mm-hmm.
We end up saying, oh, I'm tired of voting for the lesser of two evils. Well, what are you going to do to change that?
Right.
And sometimes you have to be the change you want to see.
Right.
People say, I'm not political. I don't want to get into politics. I don't do politics. And to be frank, I was that person once upon a time. But what I've come to understand in doing this job is that everything that touches your life is political. From the moment you're born, your birth certificate and your social security card, politics. Okay? So you can't deny the fact that you are political. You can say you're not politically involved.
Yeah, politically active.
Or politically active. Right?
Yeah, right.
But your life is political.
Yeah.
We have committees. Look at the committees we have. Education, health, public health, human services, labor.
Right.
Right? Anything that you can think of. Higher education. Those are all committees that we sit on and we make decisions and we put laws into effect that affect you, affect the community and affect the state at large.
At large.
That's the other thing. When I vote on a bill, it's not just for the 94th district. This is a bill that's going to go into law that's going to impact the entire state. And we have to make sure that we have representation at the table. We can't say for the people, by the people, if all the people are not being represented. And right now, all the people aren't being represented.
So how'd you get into politics? Because you've been doing this now 5 years.
Almost.
Been a state rep.
April 28th will be 5 years. Yes,
okay.
Yes. And I got involved because people approached me when the seat opened, when our current mayor, Tony Hart, decided to run for that seat. Her Senate seat opened up, and our now Senator Winfield ran for that seat. Representative seat opened up, and people approached me and asked me to run. And of course, my initial response was like, don't do politics, don't like politicians, don't trust politicians, don't want nothing to do with that. And then a certain person who is now my treasurer, Christine Bartlett Josie, was the one that really was persistent with it. And I know you got to pray on it. I said, yeah, I am going to pray on it. And I walked away kind of chuckling under my breath because I said to myself, I know doggone well God don't want me to be no politician, so this is going to be easy. And to my surprise.
To your surprise.
Went in that prayer closet and came out with a yes. So, I mean, I tell people that I ended up in politics because I was chosen. Many are called, few are chosen. Yes. And I feel like I was chosen to do this work and initially felt very unqualified and quite intimidated by the position.
Yeah, because that has to be a real enveloping whoa. Because you're coming from a space of where this was not something you were necessarily prepared for or somebody groomed you for it.
No, I did not have the pedigree, as I like to call it. Some people have the political pedigree, right? They have been groomed from the womb for this in some instances. And it was never a thought. I don't know anyone in my family outside of my aunt who's a judge in South Carolina that is into politics or an elected official. So, yeah, it was something that I definitely felt unprepared for, but I would say maybe a year into it, the epiphany came and Spirit spoke, and it was like, your life has prepared you for this. Your life experience is what you bring to this building.
Yeah.
And true enough, I've gained experience in the building, but I truly believe that it's the experience that I brought to the building that makes the difference.
Because, you have the reputation of being the so-called troublemaker,
Yeah, that's what they call me.
That's what they call you.
I've been called that all my life, so.
Yeah, and I think it's good trouble because for the simple fact that you're bringing issues to light that most people would not talk about, right?
It's necessary trouble. That's what I like to call it. It's necessary. It's necessary. It's needed. It's not optional for me.
Mm.
I can't occupy this space without standing in my truth and speaking power to power.
Yeah.
Because now I have some power. And I feel like it's my responsibility to use my voice in that capacity.
Yeah, because
to speak to those issues in ways that they haven't necessarily been spoken to
before.
Or in abundance. Because you do have people that have and do speak, but we're far and few.
A balanced budget is one thing that you are, a plank in your platform, so to speak. Minimum wage, a sustainable one, and paid family medical leave.
Yes.
Urban workforce development that fosters innovation and entrepreneurship. Equitable education, bridging the gap to resources and opportunities. An end to hypermass incarceration and the school to prison pipeline.
Yes.
Protecting and enhancing services for seniors and veterans. Protecting environment by expanding environmental laws and policies. Affordable health care and college that expands universal access to both. Now I'm going to flip this. So for most Democrats, most progressives, most so-called left-leaning, these are all good and even, some would say, righteous ways to go. But the question becomes, who pays for this? Where does the money come from to initiate some of these so-called social standards that you might expect? Because we're Connecticut, right? We have an attitude of being so-called progressive. For so long, people considered us left-leaning, but with a Yankee tinge. And basically the wherewithal to really get things done. But as we know, over the past, say, even 15 years, it's been tough to be in the Capitol. And you said it before when we opened, we are hundreds, thousands in debt. So when you start to talk about things like free college, who pays for it?
Well, you know what? I'm actually being corrected. There seems to be, and this is news to me, a surplus that's being projected for 2019.
Oh, really?
So there's obviously some homework I need to catch up on around what our budget is looking like going back into the upcoming session. So I'm interested to know how much that surplus is and exactly what we're going to be able to do with it, because I know we were able to put, I believe, $1 billion in the rainy day fund.
Okay. All right.
But that's the rainy day fund.
Right.
So, yes, I need to find out what the surplus looks like. But, I mean, to answer the question, aside from what I'm being told is a surplus, I think that we have options that were on the table that didn't make it to the House or the Senate floor. Revenue streams that we can look at.
Such as?
Tolls, which is controversial to some extent, I would say. But I do believe that we have the votes to get it passed. I believe that it makes sense. I think that the concerns that have been raised can be addressed in a way to alleviate those concerns, where people can be comfortable with seriously looking at tolls as a source of revenues. When you look at the fact that up and down this Northeast corridor, we're the only state that
probably doesn't have tolls at this moment, right? That's
right. So, I have a girlfriend, a good friend of mine. Her husband used to be a trucker, and he used to tease all the time about coming through Connecticut. All the while you're coming up the highway, but when you hit Connecticut, you're on the freeway because you're not paying anything.
Right.
And those are funds that we need for our highways, and our bridges,
maintenance,
and our roads. Yes. So, I mean, that's part of where the money comes from. There's also the talk of legalization of marijuana. That's revenue. Everyone around us is doing it. Canada just did it nationally.
Yeah. Right? I just heard that. That story. Yep.
And, to be a progressive state, I feel like, we're losing traction around some of these things where we should have been leading, where we're coming in on the tail end, which is going to impact the amount of revenue that we can get. And these things are an attraction for tourism, which is another stream of income that can be coming into the state. And there's the very, very controversial thing around, putting higher tax on the millionaires and the billionaires in the state.
Which has always been an argument.
It's always been an argument, but it's not one that's a valid argument as far as I'm concerned, because it just makes sense that the more money you make, the more taxes you pay. And it's unreasonable and not fair for working class and middle class people to be carrying the tax burden in this state.
Yeah.
I mean, and we need to talk about regionalization. That's another way to save the state a tremendous amount.
Are we large enough to do regionalization?
I believe so. I mean, this is not my wheelhouse. I can't get into the nuts and the bolts of it.
Right.
But, on the surface, what has been explained to me, there are ways that we can actually save money where we're spending money in 169 different towns.
Right.
That could be pooling resources and bringing in savings around that.
Yeah. Because other places, some things are, New Haven's a county seat. So some things are relevant to that county, but at the same time, there are different services that I'm sure would benefit the other towns that are in the county that are not as large.
Absolutely.
Not as urbane, so to speak.
Absolutely.
And probably would save, as you said, save the state a lot of money. And save those municipalities a lot of money as well.
Absolutely. And then we need to look at the education cost savings to make sure that cities and towns are getting the money that they need for education, because that will help to keep property taxes down. That will take the burden off of cities. Just being more responsible around budgeting, right, and how we spend money. And when we're saving money, how we reinvest that money. I think we need to keep up with that, because when you start to look at where we're cutting money in the budget, and we're closing agencies, and we're shrinking government, there's savings there. What are we doing to reinvest those savings?
Right.
Where is that money going? Because it needs to be coming back into education, right? We need the resources and the opportunities in the urban centers, because until the urban centers thrive, the state will not thrive. And that's something that people need to embrace, and they need to understand that it's factual. That's not something made up. The cities must thrive. When you think about where people come to eat dinner, when you think about where people work, right?
Yep.
They come to New Haven, they come to Bridgeport, they come to Stanford.
Yeah.
Right?
Hartford. Go to Hartford. Yeah.
This is where people work, but the money doesn't stay there.
Right.
And then you have to also think about the taxes we lose, especially here in New Haven, around universities that don't pay taxes on property.
Which, when I was a young and popping reporter, was always the big story, no matter what. And there were people that tried to bring the universities to the table to say, look, you've got to do something. You've got to get up off some of this cash. You
have to do that, or be innovative about the ways that you give back. Right?
Yes.
Because, and I'll talk about my district, there's always, when I knock doors, what do I hear? We need jobs. We need jobs. We need jobs. And Yale sucks up a lot of that. Over 50% of our property, goes to them. So they can employ more, right? They can open up their university to educate our kids. And make it appealing. I mean, like, the opportunities are there, but they're not necessarily marketed in the district, in our community, right? There needs to be more of a direct communication, because there are ways to supplement if that's going to remain the case. You have to reinvest in this community. You have to be vested in this community.
Right.
And I do know, they do something, but do I think they do all that they can do? Absolutely not. And another revenue stream. Let's talk about minimum wage. Everybody understands it's facts. Economic growth is driven by wage growth.
Right.
The more money people make, the more disposable income they have, the more they spend in their communities. So I think that's important. It's not just about giving people more money in their pocket. It's increasing the amount of taxes they'll have to pay.
Right.
It's giving them more money to shop at the small businesses that they can't afford to shop at, so they go to Walmart, who gets all corporate welfare.
Right.
We subsidize them in ways that are just facetious.
And that most people don't realize.
They don't.
Most people don't realize.
They don't, because they're not necessarily paying attention, and it's understandable. You got people working 2 and 3 jobs.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have youth that need summer jobs, that they can't find summer employment. You know, we talk about the mischief that our kids get into and how they come into contact with, you know, the juvenile justice system, and how they're in the detention centers and at Manson Youth, you know, Institute.
Right.
But why? Yeah, we know they're robbing and they're committing assaults and they're stealing cars. But why?
There's a reason.
Why? You know, and I know why, because I talk to these kids. A kid was recommitted, you know, because he was out there stealing cars. But why was he stealing cars? He was stealing cars because his little sister and him were hungry. And it was more so about his little sister being famished. So the opportunity presented itself. He stole a car to steal the parts, to sell the parts, so that he could have money in his pocket. And what did he do with the money? He didn't take the money and go buy a new pair of sneakers. He went to the grocery store and bought food, because there's food deprivation. You know, and then we don't talk about the trauma. We don't talk about counseling. We don't talk about the things. We need to nurture our children. They're the future. Yeah. And right now, they're destitute. Many of them, not all of them. Right. And then the ones that are not are still being impacted by their peers because of the extreme circumstances that they're dealing with before they even get to the school building.
So it's a lot. It's
a lot, but it's fixable. I think what we need to do is bring humanity back to the table.
Yeah, because it doesn't seem as if, you know, even the climate of the country is not based on humanitarian reasoning. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And I'm trying to do it without sounding
diplomatically.
Yeah, I'm putting it diplomatically. Good word. Thank you, State Rep. Because, you know, when you talk to small children, the first question they always say is, why are people being mean? Why are people being mean? And they don't understand. So there's got to be civility. Civility needs to be on the table. Let me bring you a public service announcement. The New Haven Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated presents Community Conversations That Matter. Join us for a conversation with Connecticut candidates for elected office Sunday, October 21st, 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. Come out and hear what the candidates have to say about issues in the community. Candidates running from both parties have been invited, including all statewide offices and U.S. representatives for 3rd and 5th congressional districts. It takes place at Mill River Crossing, 657 Grand Avenue, New Haven. On-site voter registration will be available. Again, on-site voter registration will be available. This is a nonpartisan event. This is a nonpartisan event co-sponsored with Elm City Communities, Housing Authority of New Haven. And if you're interested, you can follow on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. And the hashtag is DST Conversations. All right, that's this Sunday, October 21st, 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. at Mill River Crossing, 657 Grand Avenue in New Haven. You are listening to the show on WNHHLP 103.5 FM, broadcasting live from downtown New Haven. We're streaming live on TuneIn Radio and newhavenindependent.org. We're also streaming live video on Facebook Live. Or just go to facebook.com, New Haven Independent, or go to your own Facebook page and look us up. This is the show. My guest this evening is the unbought, unbossed, and unrelenting, as she likes to say. State Representative from the 94th District, Robyn Porter, and I am so appreciative of her giving her time this evening because she has been knocking on a lot of doors. She's been, if you are on social media, you have seen her out and about throughout these states in these political streets, as my friend Babs Rawls-Ivy would say. She is the chair of Labor. She sits on the Judiciary and Appropriations Committee. And her opponent, who I need to know a little bit more about, so don't think that I'm trying to put him down when I just say he's a freshman at Yale from the state of California. We'll find out more about him and see if we can get him on the show as well. State Rep Porter.
Mm-hmm.
Are we purple?
Are we purple? Well,
besides it being my favorite color, you know.
Yeah, and tomorrow you should wear purple for domestic violence.
Ah, yes.
Yes.
Thank you for the reminder.
You're welcome. We have an 18-18 split in the Senate and a very small margin in the House.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think it's 80-71. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's what it is. But it's a small margin. And I would call that purple. And
this is
we have work to do. We definitely have work to do.
But when you say work to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is half that battle really reaching across the aisle and kind of putting away the arguments? I mean, and that's obvious to somebody who's outside, but can it be done on a wider scale instead of just in certain pockets?
Absolutely. And I think half the battle is actually not making it about party, but making it about people. You know, I often tell people, you know, and it's hard for people to understand or receive it because of the climate we're in right now around Democrats and Republicans, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for me personally, it's not about whether there's a D behind your name or R.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's about policy. It's about doing what's right. If we do what's right, then we can come to an agreement. I think the problem is that what's right for some people is not right for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that, you know, for real reasons, right? People have different priorities in life, but it comes back to that humanity piece. And you just want to treat people the way you want to be treated.
Mm-hmm.
And you want people to have equity, right? You want people to have access to opportunities and access to the resources that they need, right? To be players in the game, competitive players in the game.
Yeah.
Not folks that's just sitting on the bench.
Right.
We need to level the playing field, and we need to give everyone equal and equitable opportunity, equal and equitable resources, right? We need to all be starting from the same point. And we know that that is not the way it is. That's not the way it's ever been, because that's not how this country was built.
Right.
So we're going to have some people, I like to say, you know, with a backbone. You know, we got a lot of wishbones. We need some backbones. We need some people that are going to stand in the truth and own it and fight for it in a way that it has not been fought for before. And not to say, I take that back, not because it has been fought for. I think what I'm trying to say is that we need the numbers, right? We need the masses, because unfortunately in politics, it is about money. And there's a lot of power in politics that revolves around money. And I think that's a lot of the reason why we are where we are currently. But the other piece to that is that there's this 99%, and I call that the people power. And if people...
and not to cut you off, but why do people... You know, it goes back to the conversation that we were having earlier about people feeling like their vote doesn't count. Do you have any, or do you get any impression when you're out there talking to people as to why they feel voting's just not important.
I think part of it is that they don't understand how voting relates to their daily life.
Mm.
You know, they don't understand that it's much more than showing up at the ballot box, that it's more to that's a very critical step. That's the first step, right? You register, you vote, but people need to be educated around the process and how they play a part and how important that role is, and that you have to be actively involved in this thing, this political game, right? Because you don't change the game from the outside. You have to be on the inside, which means you have to be actively involved. And you have to learn how to play the game. Then you have to master the game. And then you have to teach other people how to do that. That's why I say, I'm not into climbing ladders. I'm a ladder builder. I believe in bringing people along because I understand the importance of numbers. And me having power solely is not really a lot of power.
So are you seeing folks being groomed to
yes.
be in politics?
I do. We definitely are out there building a bench. There is an uptick in interest. There's an uptick in involvement. People are starting to be volunteering to be involved, right? Because that was a heavy lift. It's not where I want it to be, but it's getting there, right? How do you eat the elephant? One bite at a time.
Right.
How do you get to the top of the staircase? One step at a time. So we take it one step at a time, and people are much more engaged now, more so than they've been since I've been involved in it over the last 4.5 years or so. And I think that they're waking up, and I just need for them to stay woke.
Stay woke.
Stay woke.
Stay woke.
Stay woke and stay involved. Keep your hands on the plow.
Because it's not an easy push.
It's not, and it's exhausting. But the reason it's exhausting is because there are not enough laborers. The labor is plenty, but the laborers are few. And we're experiencing it right now. There's a lot to be done. It's getting done, but it could definitely be getting done quicker if we had more hands on the plow. And people are going to have to be willing to roll their sleeves up, and they're going to have to be willing to fall on the sword.
Would you say politics is not a season, but certainly year round?
Absolutely. Politics is every single day. In and out of season, it's politics. It's always politics. You don't get to take a break from it. I think one of the epiphanies for me was one day I looked up, and in the halls of the Capitol, where the lobbyists come, I looked up and my eye doctor was there. I was like, and he was up there lobbying us for a bill. That was important to eye doctors, right?
Right.
So when you get that kind of awakening, it's like, okay, this is really a part of everyday life. When I go to the doctor for a physical or a checkup.
Yeah.
And my primary doctor is, the first 15 minutes we spend talking about politics because she understands how this impacts her.
Right.
As a business owner, as a medical doctor. And I just need for people to think about it like that. When you're talking about sending your kids to school, when you're talking about being able to afford college, we're talking about tuition-free college here.
Yeah.
We're talking about taking the burden off of families, right? Especially
Will
families.
UConn ever be tuition-free?
Anything's possible. Anything's possible. And I think if we get, not if, but when we get it together, that, those will definitely be options that we can look at seriously moving forward with. Because it will benefit us, and it'll help to level the playing field with New York and Massachusetts.
Well, the other thing is, too, and I don't know if you may know the number right off the cuff, but we've had a real tough time retaining our young people because of wages and taxes and all of that
especially when you can go right
thing.
next door to New York and make $15 in minimum wage and go to school for free. Yeah, it is hard to retain our young people, and we are definitely trying to make it more attractive in the state to keep them here. And that That's two ways to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Minimum wage and free tuition. And it always comes back to how do we pay for it? But we pay for what we want to pay for. We find the money for the things that are important to us. And when I say us, I say the people with the power. The people with the money know how to make more money.
Yeah.
So rich people are getting richer and poor people are getting poor.
Mm-hmm.
And until poor people and working class people and middle class folks stand up and say enough is enough and make a demand, because power concedes nothing without a demand,
yeah,
it will continue to be the status quo. So we're just going to have to be more responsible citizens, and we're going to have to take our responsibilities to heart, right? And it's going to have to be part of our core existence.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just
Mm-hmm.
like you get up and go to work. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you need to know what's going on. And unfortunately, because of the media, everybody knows what's going on nationally, but not everybody necessarily knows what's going on at the state and the local level.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where politics is. Politics is local.
Yeah. You know, I've always heard that. Yeah.
We need to be building a wall. You know, we know somebody that's talking about building a wall. Well, we need to be building our own wall. And that wall is a defense against what's coming down, what's
Mm-hmm.
trickling down from D.C. You know, the attack on women, you know, the attack on working class and middle class people, the attack on our seniors and our veterans,
Mm-hmm.
the cuts they're talking about making in order to cover tax cuts that they've given to the rich.
Yeah, because I heard a report either yesterday or Monday,
Mm-hmm.
and they were talking about how the tax cuts are so huge that they have ballooned the debt. And so now they're trying to figure out where they're going to get the money from to make that up. And they're going into the so-called entitlement programs. When in fact, it wasn't about the so-called entitlement programs in the beginning, but where taxes were being cut and what programs were being dropped. So now we're in trillions of dollars of debt as a country,
Mm-hmm.
and we've got to find our way out. So I don't know if the general public realize what that looks like, what that means. And it in some kind of way, it may affect folks' Social Security. It may affect their pensions. People may not get certain things that they thought they were going to get as they neared retirement, for the simple fact that all the things that they've been looking at are things that they've put money into and are now perceived as entitlement as opposed to a promise from the government.
And not just that, I mean, Social Security is something that we pay into.
Right.
You don't get to go to work without paying into Social Security.
Right.
So that is not an entitlement. That is an investment that people have made it in themselves for their future, that now they're talking about not allowing them to yield the interest on.
Right.
That's robbery. That's robbery. And it's runaway inequality.
Mm-hmm. And it affects a lot of people.
It affects everybody.
It affects
We
a
all
lot
pay
of
Social
people.
Security.
Right. And,
Nobody's exempt from that.
and they're telling people my age, well, you may not get to use it because we might have to take it. And it's like, so I've
More like
paid
we didn't
all this
already
money.
took it.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I've paid all this money and now I get none of it back.
Mm-hmm. That's
But yet
right.
and still, if I refuse to pay it, I'm in trouble.
Yes, ma'am.
What do you want to see? What do you want to see come out of this election? And what do you see coming out of the state capitol in the next session?
What do I want to see? I want to see us working together collectively, collaborating in a way that benefits everyone. I don't want nobody left out. I don't want anyone left behind. And I believe that that's possible. That's the way it should be. But it means upsetting the status quo.
Mm-hmm.
It means, people having to give back some stuff that don't belong to them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a heavy lift. But I think that if we can get enough people to care, and I think that people are beginning to care, I know they're beginning to care because there's no denying the injustices anymore. They're just so blatant.
Yeah.
Right? The writing is literally on the wall. You don't get to ignore it. You can't ignore it because at every turn, you're hearing about it. You're seeing it. And you're feeling it. There was a time when people didn't feel it. Or, only a select few felt it.
Right.
But this thing is expanding to the point where there's not going to be a lot of people that won't get touched by this and haven't already been touched by it. So, I mean, for me, that's what I want to see. I want to see us be able to truly work together in a way that's just beneficial and in harmony with what I believe is our destiny. And I do believe that we're going to get there. I have every hope that, tomorrow's going to be, well, maybe not tomorrow, but the future is going to be brighter.
Yeah.
Right. And that things will get better. And that, unfortunately, there's going to be some painful times
realities
in between that. And we're experiencing it now. But,
give a reason why people should go out and vote.
Give a reason why people should go out and vote because our lives depend on it. Our livelihoods depend on it. Our futures depend on it. Our children's futures depend on it. It's not optional. That's why you should go out and vote. People want to always talk about, well, your ancestors and people died for this. We know that. I believe in giving people something tangible. And when you talk about your children and your grandchildren, right? You talk about the future of this country and the direction that we're headed in. That's the reason why you should go out and vote. You don't get to sit home and not do it this year or any year, midterm or presidential.
Mm-hmm.
But this is an important election. And if we don't go out and vote, there will be consequences to that. And I'm afraid that the consequences are going to reflect a lot of what we're seeing on a national level if Democrats don't get out and do their duty. And it is your duty. It is your civic responsibility to vote.
And don't forget, the New Haven Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated is going to have community conversations that matter Sunday, October 21st, 2 to 5 p.m. You can come out and hear what the candidates have to say. They'd like for you to join them in a conversation with candidates for elective office. Again, that's Sunday, October 21st, 2 to 5 p.m. at Mill River Crossing, 657 Grand Avenue in New Haven. State Rep from the 94th District, Robyn Porter, it has been a pleasure to have you on the show. I am so glad you're here.
Thank you. That goes both ways. It has been my pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. And at some point, I'll have you come back and we won't talk as many politics. Maybe music.
Yeah.
Maybe something else that people don't necessarily know or familiar with you in, that light.
I'm down for that.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
That would be wonderful.
Yes, it would.
Thank you so much for being here today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
And my audience, thank you. You're listening to the show, WNHHLP 103.5 FM, broadcasting live from downtown New Haven. We're streaming live on TuneIn Radio and NewHavenIndependent.org. We're also streaming live video on Facebook Live right now. Just go to facebook.com, New Haven Independent, or just go to your Facebook page and look us up. After all, you never know who's going to be on the show. We're done.
All right.
We are done. Yay.